Hello everyone, welcome to English Literature with Sumi. In today's video, we are going to discuss the Augustan age or the age of Pope. The age ranges from 1700 to 1750. Now, the 18th century can be divided into two periods. The first period is the Augustan age or the age of Pope that we are going to discuss today, and the second period is known as the transition period that we will be discussing in our next video. And the transition period, it ranges from 1750 to 1800. So in today's video we are only going to discuss the Augustan age, which is also known as the age of Pope. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So these are the few points that I am going to discuss in today's video. Firstly, I'll be discussing about the historical background to the Augustan age, then the literary characteristics of the period, then why the period is known as the classic age, then I'll be discussing about the prose writers of the period, then the poets of the period, and then I'll be giving a brief conclusion about the development of its literary forms. So before proceeding on to the main part of the video, if you are new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe to get the latest notifications to my video. And I would like to tell you that I post about every topic related to English literature or English language. So if you are interested in knowing English literature better, do subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to get the latest notifications. So let's discuss the historical background. So the first important point regarding the historical background is the rise of the political parties. So in the reign of Charles II, the terms Whig and Tory first became current, and by the year 1700 they were in everybody's mouth, whether it be the aristocratic class or be it be normal people. Then the Whig party stood for the preeminence of personal freedom as opposed to the Tory view of the royal divine right. So the Whig, they supported personal freedom, and the Tory, they supported the royal divine right. So in the matter of religion also, the Whigs were lower churchmen and the Tories were the higher churchmen. So the Tories were always in a higher position than the Whigs. The next important event that took place during this period is the Foreign War. The Foreign War here refers to the War of the Spanish Succession, which was brilliantly successful under the leadership of Marlborough, who was a great general and a prominent Tory politician. Then the succession. So when Queen Anne ascended the throne, the succession seemed to be safe enough, for she had a numerous family. But her children all died before her, and in 1701 it became necessary to pass an act of settlement because after the queen it was her children who was about to rule, but as they died, the Whig measure by which the succession was settled upon the hands of the House of Hanover. So the succession was led from Queen Anne to the House of the Hanover. So the spirit of the age. So it was an age of tolerance, moderation and common sense, and it sought to refine the matters and introduce into life the rule of sweet reasonableness. And often when we discuss about the age of Pope, it is also known as the classic age, which I will be discussing in few of my next slides. So it was also known as the age of reason also, because here in this period reason dominated the field of writing, also of the creativity also of the writers. So the middle way of control and reason and the distrust of enthusiasm are faithfully reflected in the literature of the period, which we will come to know when we discuss the writers of the period. Next is the social development that took place during this period. So the first half of the 18th century is very remarkable for the rapid social development in England. So for the first time, the people, they started learning the task of living together while still holding different opinions among themselves. So in a single generation, nearly 2000 public coffee houses were opened, and each was a center of sociability which sprang up in London alone, and a number of private clubs is quite as astonishing. So there were both public coffee houses and private coffee houses that came up during this period, and these coffee houses were the center of sociability where people used to visit and they used to engage themselves with different discussions, with different creativity amongst themselves. So next we come to the literary characteristics of the period. So firstly, it was an age of prose. Now when we say it was an age of prose, we very clearly mean that poetry was very less in number and there was the predominance of prose writings. So there was a drift away from the poetry of passion which was pronounced in this period, and there was also the application of wit and common sense in the writings of this period. But there are one great poet of this period who is Alexander Pope, and he experimented in heroic couplet. On the other hand, the great names of this period are those of the prose writers like Swift, Addison, Steele and Defoe. They are those of prose writers primarily, means they are primarily prose writers, and they are writers of a very high quality. The next characteristic is those of political writings. So I have already mentioned that two political parties were dominating during this period. They were the Whigs and the Tories, and the rise of these two political parties was accompanied by an increased interest of political passion among the people and also among the writers. So in this period, the writers either belonged to the Whig party or the Tory party, and it was indeed a golden age for political pamphleteering, and the writers took great advantage of it, and they were famous also for writing bad things about the opposite party, and in this way political writing became famous, or we can say pamphlets became famous during this period. Then the next we have is the clubs and coffee houses. I have already mentioned that there was the emergence of clubs and coffee houses. Now the increase in activity in politics led to a great addition to the number of political clubs and coffee houses, and these coffee houses, they became the clearing houses for literary businesses, and from them branched purely literary associations or literary collaborations such as the famous Scriblerus Club and the Kit Kat clubs, those haunts on the fashionable writers of the period. And these were the clubs where people used to discuss about politics, about their day-to-day life, about any writing that they has come across, or about any magazines that they would like to publish. So in this way, clubs and coffee houses became a social interaction place among people. Next up, we have the periodical writings. Now, periodicals were also beginning to evolve during this period. Periodicals like the Examiner, the Guardians, the Freeholders, and there are other periodicals as well, like that of the Tatler and the Spectator, where the writers used to publish their essays. So when we read about Richard Steele and Addison, I will be discussing this in detail. So firstly, we should only know here is that the periodicals started evolving during this period, and they became a great prose work during this period. Then the next is publishing houses. So as drama began to decline during this period, so there was an increased interest in politics and in reading. So the publishing houses, they became to develop more and more, and the people, they used to spend their money in opening publishing houses, because there were writers who were writing works and there was reading public. A class of reading public also emerged. So it was a very profitable business at that point of time to open publishing houses. So new publishing houses began to emerge during this period in great numbers. Then the last literary characteristics of the period is the new morality that we can see in this period. There was a new tone in the writing of the time, that is during this period, and a new attitude that developed among the people towards life and towards morality. Another development of this period is seen in the revised opinion that people have for women. People during this period used to see women with a new respect and dignity that we have not seen in the previous period. But there is no doubt that there was still some coarseness left during this period as well, as is evident in the writings of the prose writers, especially the ones who use satire in their writings. So, now let us see why this age of Pope is also known as the classic age. Now, the term classic, in general, it refers to the writers of the highest rank in any nation. So, in literature, it was first applied to the works of great writers like great Greek and Roman writers like Homer, Virgil, etc. But in this period, it is used quite completely differently. And the writers of this age, they used to look at life critically, and they used to emphasize on intellect rather than on imagination. And they used to repress all kinds of emotion and enthusiasm that we can see in the earlier periods, and they only used precise and elegant method of expression. So this way of analyzing, or this way of looking at life, it is known as the classic age, because they are not looking at life in a very new way, but they used to look at life very critically. So for this reason, this age is known as the classic age. Now, in literature, this period is also known as the Augustan age. So Augustan was applied to a term of high praise, because during the reign of King Augustus, it was a golden age of Latin literature. So the age of Pope is also a golden age of English literature. So in this way, this age is also known as the Augustan age. Now let us see who were the prose writers of the period. First we have Jonathan Swift. So Swift was born in Dublin, and though both his parents were English, his connection with Ireland was to be maintained more or less closely till the day he died. So he always had a desire to excel in poetry, yet in bulk his verse is considerable and they were not of a great merit. His poems were to a large extent recreations of other writers or the works of other writers. So his prose works include The Battle of Books, Tale of a Tub, The Liver's Travels, and he also wrote some political tracts like The Conduct of the Allies, The Public Spirit of the Whigs, etc. So when we go through his works, we will find that he used satire in his writing, and one famous example of the way in which he satirizes the general public or the aristocratic class as well can be seen in one of his famous books, that is Gulliver's Travels, which has been divided into 4 parts. So he is a great English satirist, and his dissection of humanity and the way he used to dissect the characteristic of a human being shows his powerful mind. So the next writer we have is Joseph Addison. So he early made his mark as a serious and accomplished scholar, and this characteristic made him attracted in the eyes of the Whig leaders, who marked him out as a future literary prop of their faction, and they would like to use him as a writer during their political campaigns or during the time when they need him the most, that is during the election campaigns. Then in 1704, the campaign gave him a reputation as one of the major poets of the age, but it was not that famous as was his essays. And he also wrote dramas like the Cato in 1730, part of which had been in manuscript as early as 1703. He also attempted an opera, that is a musical thing, Rosamond, but it was a failure. And he is famous for his essays. Joseph Addison, the name of Joseph Addison is not associated with poetry or drama, but it is associated very famously with his essays. So, addition, he contributed his essays to the periodicals published by Richard Steele. So, he collaborated with Richard Steele in the publication of the periodicals, that is the Tatler and the Spectator. So, in the Spectator, Addison wrote 274 essays out of a complete total of 555 essays. This means that he wrote a few number greater than that of Richard Steele. So, he also assisted Steele, that is Richard Steele, in the publication of the Guardian also. Then the next prose writer we have is Sir Richard Steele. So, Steele had a varied and rather an unfortunate career, which was largely due to his own ardent disposition. So, he wrote some prose comedies which are The Funeral, The Lying Lover, The Tender Husband, The Conscious Lover, etc. And these prose comedies can be associated with the general scheme of the Restoration comedies. If you have not watched my video on the Restoration period, you can click on the I button and watch that video as well. But these are without the grossness and impudence of their morals. So, the Restoration comedies are often treated as immoral, and these, that is the plays of Richard Steele, they are not considered to be immoral. But it is only as a miscellaneous essays that he finds his place in literature. So, I have already told you that he had started the periodicals, the Tatler in 1709 and the Spectator in 1711. So, other periodicals of Steele include the Guardian, the Englishman, the Reader and the Plebeian. So, mainly the aim of Steele's essays was frankly didactic, and he desired to bring about a reformation of contemporary society regarding manners, and he is notable for his consistent advocacy of womanly virtue. I have already told you that during this period there was a respect and dignity shown towards women, and Steele also he advocated womanly virtue and the ideal of the gentleman of courtesy, chivalry and good taste. So, mostly his essays were that of didactic nature. Then the next prose writer we have is Daniel Defoe. So, much of Defoe's life is still undetermined, that is still unknown to us, and he used to work for both the Whigs and the Tories, by whom he was frequently employed in obscure and questionable work. But we don't know what works he used to do for both the parties, and he died in London. So, his prose can be divided into two groups, that is the political writings and the fiction works, that is the works of fiction. His political writings include The Shortest Way with Dissenters, The True Born Englishman, etc. And his famous works of fiction include Robinson Crusoe, Duncan Campbell, Memoirs of a Cavalier, Captain Singleton, then there is Moll Flanders, Journal of the Plague Year, Colonel Jack, Roxana and A New Voyage Around the World. So, these are his famous works of fiction for which he is known in the world of literature today. Then the other prose writers of this period include John Arbuthnot, His writings were mostly political. Then we have Lord Bolingbroke. He also prided himself on being both a patron of letters and of course a man of letters. Then we have George Berkeley. He is different from the others because he used to write on a diversity of topics like that of scientific, philosophical and metaphysical subjects. Then we have Lady Mary Wortley Montagu. She has a masculine force of character. Although she is a lady, but she has a masculine force of character and she is famous for her letters. Not famous, but she is known for her letters. Then we have the Earl of Shaftesbury. He had little taste for the politics of the time, and although he aspired to be a great writer. So these writers are there, but they are not as famous as the writers that I have discussed previously. They are there, but they had contributed very little during this period. Now we come to the poets of the period. Now, as I have mentioned at the very beginning, that this age is also known as the age of Pope. So, as the Puritan age is also known as the age of Milton, because Milton was the great writer of the period. So, this age is known as the age of Pope because it was Alexander Pope who, as a poet, established his reputation during this period. So, let us see what poetry did he contributed during this period. So, Pope during his lifetime, he became acquainted with Addison, Swift and Steele, whose friendship he eagerly cultivated during his lifetime. But one important thing that I need to mention here is that Pope suffered a lot during his lifetime at the hands of his enemies, who spared neither his works, his family, nor his personal deformities. Now, when I'll be making another video about the writers separately one by one, there I'll be discussing that Pope, that is Alexander Pope, he has many physical deformities and his enemies used to make fun of it. We can see many poems where he is being laughed at because of his deformities. Okay. So his poetry also includes pastorals, an essay on criticism, Windsor Forest, The Rape of the Lock, translations of the Iliad and Odyssey. So in translating the Odyssey, he took help from two other persons. Then we have the Dunciad, then to Lord Bathurst, of the use of riches, of the knowledge and characters of men, of the characters of women, an essay on men, imitations of Horace, an epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot. So we can see that he had contributed a huge bulk of poetry during his lifetime. And one important thing to note here is that, as I have told you, that he has physical deformities, but his physical deformities had never come in his way of creating poetry or writing his works. So it is a very excellent part on his behalf to write such great poets during this period. So he was a great artist, and a study of his technique, if we study his technique in detail, it will show that he has a meticulous sense of the exact word in the exact place. Now we have come across many writers, they know the exact word, but they don't know the exact place where to place it. But in case of Pope, this combination, that is of the exact word and the exact place, is in a great number and can be seen in his works. His use of the heroic couplet also marks a great difference from that of Dryden. Now, when we say a starist or an artist, we would like to compare him to Dryden, but he is different from Dryden in his use of the heroic couplet. So, if we talk about his literary features of his writings, we can say that both his subject and his style in the poems is limited. They take people of his own class and not of a upper class or a lower class than him, and they deal with their common experiences and their common interest and aspirations. Then within this limit, we cannot say that his work is powerless or something. It is very effective and also powerful, and he uses a keen wit in his writings, and his zeal is also unshakable. In serious topics, as in the essay on man, he can give imperishable shape to popular opinions. So he was indeed a great artist. Then the other poets or minor poets we can say are Matthew Prior. He wrote The Hind and the Panther transverse to the story of the country and the city mouse. Then the Elma or the progress of the mind, and Solomon on the vanity of the world. Then we have John Gay, who wrote the rural sports, the Shepherd's Wig, then the What Do You Call It? Then we have Edward Young, who wrote The Last Day and the Force of Religion and the Love of Fame. Then we have Sir Samuel Gurt. He wrote only single work of his is The Dispensary, which gave him his place as a minor poet. Then we have Lady Winchilsea. Her two works that we can name here is The Spleen, which was a Pindaric ode, and The Prodigy. And she also wrote Miscellany Poems, which is a collection of poems maybe, containing a nocturnal reverie. So these are the few minor poets, but they could not match their reputation or their stature with one of the great poets of the period, who is Alexander Pope. So let us come to the conclusion of this period as well as this video. So in concluding this age, I would like to talk about something related to the development of the literary forms. There were three literary forms, that is poetry, drama and prose. Let us see how they developed during this period. So in poetry we have the lyric. So the lyric almost disappeared during this period, and what remains is of a light and artificial nature, which cannot have a which we cannot say that it has a great bulk that has been written by writers. Then we have the ode. The ode still feebly survives in the Pindaric form. Pope wrote a few with poor success. That means ode was similar to lyric, that is development of lyric. Then the satire. Now the satire type is common and it is of a high quality. One of the most famous satires of this period is that of Pope's Dunciad, and of course I would like to mention here is about Gulliver's Travels. It is also a great work of satire. If we go to the depth of this work, we will find that yes, satire is being used in this work as well. But as we are talking here only about poetry, so it was the Dunciad, which has a great reputation as a work of satire during this period. Then we have the narrative poetry. This is of a considerable bulk and contains some of the best productions of the period. And Pope's translation of Homer, as I have told you, is of a good example. Then we have the pastoral. Now the artificial type of the pastoral, not the real one, but an artificial type of the pastoral was highly popular during this period as well. So when we talk of drama, the brilliant and exotic flavor of the Restoration comedies that we have seen during the Restoration period has withered, and nothing of any merit could be seen during this period, although there is some publication of dramas by Edition, that is the Cato. It was not of a great merit. Then next we have prose. So there was the rise of the periodical press, because periodicals were beginning to evolve during this period. As I have told you about Richard Steele and Edition's Tatler and Spectator. So there was the rise of the periodical press. Then there is the rise of the essay, because Edition Steele along with others, they used to contribute their essays in the periodicals that has been published during this period. Then there were prose narratives as well. So much of the narrative is still disguised as allegory. Yes, Gulliver's Travels is also considered as an allegory, but it is a class of prose narrative. And Editions also the Vision of Mirza, that is also a prose narrative. Then miscellaneous prose here refers to the large body of religious, political and philosophical work. Religious, so we already know that there were religious work in every period. Then political work also grew during this period, because there were the dominance of two political parties, there is a Whigs and the Tories, and so pamphlets were being written, and of course there were many political writings during this period. Then philosophical work was also there. So these were the development of literary forms and the way in which literary forms developed. So that's all for today, and in my next video I'll be discussing about the transition period, the period that ranges from 1750 to 1800. So if you are new to my channel and if you are interested in English literature, do subscribe to my channel and stay updated of new videos, and do press the bell icon to get the latest notifications. And if you are also interested in the other periods of the English literature, so you can click on the I button and you can see the other videos that I have made till now of the history of English literature series. So do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so that you never miss any update related to my channel.